Hi everyone, McGee here to go over my Week 1 XPDLA matchup against Zesty Cheeto in the Flare Division. So this is kind of a recap and analysis of what I brought, what I prepped for, and how I was intending to work my way through his team. There was a couple of misplays by me, and then a Rotom-Heat that well overperforms what his goal was for the match, but we'll dive into that in a moment. First, we'll go to the team builder and kind of recap what the team was intended to do, what the pieces were, and what my concerns were going into the match. So, starting from the top, Dragapult, we were aiming for a subset, largely because Mega Mawile with Sucker Punch was always going to be a problem for Dragapult if I didn't have protection. So, getting behind a sub, burning it, and then hexing it, if all of that were to play out, was very beneficial to him being able to address what was the most concerning offensive mon on the other team. Uh, Speed creeps to out creep, I believe it was Cinderace, so that it was always going to go first. Otherwise, heavy investment in special attack to do damage and then some additional bulk. Mega Diancie, again, speed invested to outspeed max speed Nihilego, which does show up, so it was relevant. Psychic to deal with the Galarian Wheezing. Hidden Power Ice because Gliscor was a huge concern. Earth Power for a couple of other options, including Nihilego, and then Moonblast is the most reliable stab option. Skarmory, whose primary focus was to be the one defensive pivot that was reliable for most of the time against the Mawile. So leftovers and sturdy and a huge defensive investment. A little bit of speed to speed creep Mega Mawile in case it was trying to speed creep Skarmory, just to give me a better chance of being in front of it and going first in case I needed to roost before taking hits. What will end up being the most important piece on this team in this matchup is the Rotom-Heat. Just basically a max HP, max speed because they also have a Rotom. Even though mine's better, I still wanted to make sure I was speed matching it. And so Discharge for paralysis, which again will be relevant. Pain Split, which will be really relevant. Nasty Plot, Overheat. Pretty standard set. It's just going to turn out very, very well. Gastrodon is kind of my answer to Gliscor again because Gliscor is just a huge, difficult piece for me to break. It doesn't come, unfortunately, so it was a lot of prep for something that didn't show up. Ice Beam, Recover, Toxic, Earth Power. I do forget in this match, and we'll get to it. I forget that Nihilego has a standard coverage move, and it does end up costing me this Gastrodon, but it was originally built to be able as be a soft answer for Nihilego as well before it got boosted, as it resists both of its stabs of poison and rock, but it does not do its job very well. And then finally, rounding out the team is Meloetta, Assault Vest, which was, again, as a soft check to Nihilego in case it got rolling so that I had a way to address it. And then I ultimately went with the offensive physical version. So Relic Song because I needed to be able to change forms. Close Combat, great stab, hits most things it needs to. Ice Punch again because Gliscor is a concern. And then U-Turn allows me to pivot out and keep momentum. And then so ultimately the team that shows up for him is the Galarian Weezing, which my primary answer to was always going to be my two main offensive pieces in Dragapult and Mega Diancie. Mega Mawile, which again is very concerning. I had strong answers with Skarmory and then some decent answers with Dragapult and Rotom-Heat. Miltank, very bulky, not overly concerning, as my Skarmory could always 1v1 it. Cinderace, which is meant to be managed okay by the combination of Rotom-Heat and Gastrodon. Nihilego, which I have answers for with the Gastrodon and the Meloetta, and then some speed investment by the Mega Diancie and Dragapult just to ensure I had ways of always going first in front of it if it wasn't choice locked. And then finally the Rotom Mo, which my Rotom-Heat addresses very, very well as my Dragapult if needed. So we're going to switch this to slow. The way I want to lead off in this match is just getting my Meloetta out because I wanted to not proc, but activate my Aria mode and get into that change of form as quickly as possible so that I had it available to me the whole game. I was hoping for a Miltank lead because Miltank wouldn't have seen the matchup disadvantage. It would have seen itself being in an advantageous spot, so I probably could have set up very easily in front of that and got into my Aria form. Unfortunately, he leads with Cinderace, so I need to pivot out into Gastron. Great answer to it. I'm not too concerned about anything it wants to do, but again, it U-turns for momentum. Strong switch by him. He goes into Rotom-Mo. Obviously, I can't stay in. He makes a very good call because I'm going to play conservative because this is week one. He goes into a Volt Switch to gain momentum, keep the pieces in front that he wants to keep in front. Again, Nihilego comes in. Rotom can't stay in front of that. I'm forced back into Gastrodon. Very logical switch by me. And here's where I make the mistake. Unfortunately, Life Orb tells me it's not choice locked, so I should be aware of its coverage moves. I overlook in its moveset that it has access to grass. I mean, obviously there's hidden power to be wary of, but I forget it has grass on access too. And so it was just an oversight by me. Obviously, he was going to carry an answer for Gastrodon because otherwise it walls both of its stabs. So this is just me overlooking an option it has. And so it gets a very quick kill on my Gastrodon with the Grass Knot. And then it gets a little scary because it gets the +1 boost plus Life Orb. That's a lot of damage it can threaten. So I need to get my offense out there quickly that I know can take a hit, which is my Meloetta. Takes the hit fine, gets the Relic Song. No proc for the sleep, unfortunately, but it's no big deal. Fortunately for me, he stays in. Um, he has a very safe switch in with Galarian Weezing he doesn't take. I think he's just trying to break me. But he had ways to switch out and keep momentum on his side. If he had gone into Weezing, he walls that out for almost no damage at all, and then I'm forced out, and momentum stays on his side. So I was fortunate he doesn't opt to go to his defensive pivot there, and so Meloetta gets a nice kill on something that was already causing me some trouble. And then he comes in with Rotom-Mo. I don't know if this is Scarf or not. I'm not going to risk the KO, so I'm just going to go into a safe defensive option. There's no reason to risk anything after I've just gotten myself back to neutral. Leaf Storm comes in, great for me. I know it's forced out now, so there's a lot I can play with. I have both Nasty Plot and Pain Split at my disposal. So Pain Splitting on a Milk Tank, great for me. It's got a lot of HP. I have very little. Again, free Nasty Plot. I'm not scared of its Body Slam shenanigans for paralysis. It tries to Thunder Wave here, expecting a switch out. So it just gives me a really free chance to set up, which I do appreciate. I get the discharge. I get this paralysis proc. This one doesn't mean all too much because I've always outsped it anyway, or I was outspeeding it anyway because it wasn't speed invested. So this paralysis doesn't matter. It's just confirmation for him. It's not worth keeping this Mill Tank alive any longer, so I get the nice sack on it. He comes in with his Rotom-Mo. Honestly, a really bad switch in. There's just nothing this Rotom-Mo can do to pressure me unless it was going to try and trick, but it doesn't do that. So this was just not a good coverage piece to bring back in. He's basically forced in with Mega Mawile at this point, is what he should have come in with. Maybe Cinderace, but neither. This Rotom-Mo doesn't really threaten me. More or less, what he's trying to do is force an overheat to get my special attack back down to 0, so that maybe he can survive a little better with his other pieces. So he leaves Storms here, gets my health low. Obviously, I'm forced into the overheat because it's a safe click. I take care of Rotom-Mo. Uh, so this is where the game is basically lost for him. He comes in with his Cinderace because he needs to be able to try to get a high roll KO on me, and he's not confident that Mega Mawile is going to achieve that. And the Weezing is just free Pain Split bait for me, so he knows better than that to bring the Weezing in. So he goes for the Pyro Ball. Again, thankfully I have enough HP that I'm able to survive that. I get the health back, and at this point, there's no point in me doing anything else besides discharging and fishing for a paralysis, or getting the paralysis so that I outspeed and can go for a KO. And I am very fortunate to get that discharge paralysis because now I do outspeed the Cinderace, and now I can KO the Cinderace because it doesn't have Sucker Punch, or it doesn't reveal Sucker Punch for that matter anyway. And so now Cinderace is out of the way. This is basically game over because what Mawile really has to do here, and it's too scared to do, it really just needs to go for a knockoff, expecting me to discharge. Because he goes for the knockoff, then Rotom's guaranteed out of the way because my Mega Mawile just hits really, really hard. Instead, he tries to go for a hard call when I have every incentive to click Pain Split here because that's guaranteed damage no matter what. If I go for the overheat, he clicks Sucker Punch, I do nothing. Nothing's accomplished. I go for the Pain Split, I'm guaranteed damage because I know I outspeed this. And so regardless of whether he clicks Knockoff or Sucker Punch, Rotom's had a successful 1v1 against this Mawile to open it up for the cleanup with Mega Diancie. So it's a very successful turn for me. I get the Pain Split, and Mega Mawile wastes a turn. Now it's weaker, so now I can reliably hit it with Overheat. At this point, he really should be called. He's going to go for the knockoff here instead, or what is likely the knockoff. We don't actually know. He's going to go for that instead on this turn. And, at this point, he really just needs to click Sucker Punch. Not that it really matters in the larger scope of this game, but obviously I'm going to attack here because now I've done chip damage. I've gotten health back. There's no reason for me to click anything besides Overheat at this point in time. And so now that's gone. All that's left is a Galarian Weezing, which, unless it has Toxic, this Rotom easily 1v1s, and it doesn't have Toxic. So I can freely Nasty Plot here because I know it's not going to KO me with whatever move it wants to do. And so now the confusion's unfortunate. That's what happens. But I get some Pain Splits on Weezing. Weezing's got a lot of HP, so it's just really easy to get healthy in front of that. It's Toxic Spiking. What else is it going to do? Might as well try. But we're in in-game mode here. So I'm just getting myself bulky so that the overheats can do enough damage. And then I think it's going to survive by a couple of percentage points, but it's largely irrelevant. Oh, I do hit myself with confusion. But again, Weezing just has no way to do damage. It's got Strange Steam, Toxic Spikes, likely Pain Split of its own, which is meaningless against a Rotom, and then some other coverage move that doesn't come into play, maybe Flamethrower for the Skarmory. And so now Strange Steam misses, again, meaningless. And then I'm able to go in for the Discharge for the KO finish. And so that ends up being a 5-0 for me in week one. The game plan was never for Rotom to be this effective. It was meant to address his Rotom, be a solid answer to Mega Mawile, at least threaten it so that it has a hard time sweeping, scare things out like his Weezing, kind of stand in front of his Cinderace well, depending on what set it's running. Cinderace doesn't really like to 1v1 a Rotom-Heat because it can't click Stab, and then it always is at risk for being status by either a T-Wave or a Discharge or a Toxic, so it's not a favorable 1v1 for the Cinderace. And so Rotom ends up being a very effective Mon here. My primary attackers in Dragapult and Diancie never see the field. Skarmory doesn't have to do its job of being the answer to Mawile, so it just gets to sit the bench. Meloetta does its small bit contribution, which is very essential, which is removing the Nihilego, because that was obviously the one piece that was always going to kill Rotom-Heat, because Power Gym with a Life Orb was just always going to annihilate it. So once that was out of the way, Rotom-Heat just had a really easy time sitting there and cleaning up. And so the game goes very favorably for me. The prep was fortunately there, and then there wasn't enough answers brought by his team to address the Rotom after he willingly sacked his Nihilego early in the game. So that's week one. I will be back with my next video covering week two, and I will continue throughout this 9-week season in XPDLA. So stay tuned for more videos.